Hello and welcome to Transforming Worlds. In this episode, we speak to Andy Sontag.
Change is hard. And oftentimes we don't change until the road that we're going down is too difficult
Mm-hmm.
and too challenging. And then we choose a different road. But if the road that we're going down is smooth sailing, there's no potholes, you're driving, I think it's incredibly difficult for people to change. I love the idea or the vision that in some way we're at the beginning of a new enlightenment. And this, I don't believe that transformation happens without relationships. And I think that's again the strong suit that you have to lean into. So what I found is that when that trust is really built with the organization that you're trying to support, then the seeds for transformation have fertile ground to grow within.
Andy is a learning experience designer and the program director of Kaospilot Experience Design. He has developed an experience design methodology that is being used by thousands of people around the world. And he's worked for organizations like Adidas, Volkswagen, and Lego to design experiences that grow people and relationships. I've known Andy for many years and I have experienced him as an incredible guide to the learning process by really understanding what goes through people and how to guide that process of learning from a lens of possibility and curiosity. We talk about so many wonderful things in this episode, about his role as a learning designer, about the importance of connection before content, about how we transform through the things that we experience and learn, and how this leads to new combinations and new ideas and new possibilities, sometimes through discomfort, which is practically inevitable when faced with the fact that there is so much more that we can do and so much more that we can learn. And that is what characterizes this incredible journey of discovering and learning that Andy practices every day through his work at the Kaospilot. Tune in. Welcome, Andy, to Transforming Worlds. I'm excited to have you with me today. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really honored to be here with you, Carola. I'm
Hmm,
good. I'm good. Yeah.
that's beautiful. So tell us, what's transforming for you these days?
Well, a lot is transforming. It's like being, I feel, the world is the context is like water, and the water is a little bit rough at the moment. If we use that metaphor. So I think, what's transforming for me right now is more of a what, what are you navigating towards? How do you navigate in the rough water? What is it that guides the direction of that? And I would say that yeah, it's challenging, but it's also exciting times for the world.
It's funny that you choose that metaphor because you and I met about, I don't know, 12 years ago through Change Ahead, which is a book that has sailing, as in sort of regatta sailing and as a team sport, as a metaphor. And back then, you were starting to create what became the experience design course at Chaos Pilots. And one of the things that fascinated me is that your transformative capacity to bring that into form came from your personal experiences. So you really bring your whole self into the mix. So what's transforming for you ends up being kind of your fuel to create sort of transformative programs within Chaos Pilots, experiences for your family and friends. What was that period for you? And has this become kind of a way of doing for Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a theory as well that all great scientific accomplishments and theories, even though they can be highly empirically validated, they are based in personal experience. I actually listened to a podcast about Hermet Rosa recently and his concept of resonance, and hearing that, how that comes from his personal experience is, yeah, it's deeply moving. That was a side note. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that at the core of how I believe that change happens in the world is that it happens most powerfully, effectively, dare I say, sort of only when the change is first embodied by the person that is living it. When I think of the teachers, the mentors, the people that I've learned from and have really deeply touched my life, um, Shanae Schwartz, who works with narrative psychology, it's not just that she is able to share a a set of tools and mindsets. It's literally that her worldview, she looks at the world in this way. And in that way, being in her presence is a transformative experience in itself. And I would say, as well, Carola, you're also someone who I would say I've also really seen in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so that you've really stepped into like living that perspective. And I don't know how much I do it, but it's definitely an ambition for me to be in a way that is yeah, authentic to
Yeah, I think like I've known you now all these years, so I'm certain that that is something that you do, particularly because speaking of the scientific method, you experience something and this becomes a hypothesis for you to validate or not through doing. So from an experience design perspective, it was your need back in the day to say, how can I create meaningful experiences for my friends and family when we have celebratory moments in our lives? And becoming playful with that and realizing the impact it had on people that were within your sort of circle of affection, right? So then it has this huge emotional power that is uplifting when you celebrate someone's birthday or a Christmas party and people remember it for very long because how it made them feel. Then this became something that you were able to replicate within the experience design program. And probably its main reason for success is that the program has this energy to it, that's what people remember, aside from the fact that they learn a craft and they learn a design way of doing. It's really about this embodiment, as you say it. Now, the jury isn't out yet. Some people believe that in order to transform, you have to experience pain, so move away from something. And other people say, no, no, no. You really come to transform when you move towards something. So based on a longing. Where are you on that continuum?
ooh, wow, okay. You're asking the
The hard
deep questions.
questions
Yeah,
right off the
yeah.
bat.
I love it. I love it, Carola. And I think, I'm currently in a program where I'm studying vertical development. And one of the, yeah, mindsets or, something that we're taught about that, it's from the Vertical Development Institute. I really recommend their work, is that change is hard. And oftentimes we don't change until the road that we're going down is too difficult and
Hmm.
too challenging, and then we choose a different road. But if the road that we're going down is smooth sailing, there's no potholes, you're driving, it's I think it's incredibly difficult for people to change. So I think I am actually more and more leaning towards the perspective that the phrasing I like to use is discomfort, and this comes also from my colleague Laís Gluck. She's an amazing Brazilian experience designer. She's developed a model called the waves model, which is basically
Hmm.
that through increasing discomfort, you increase the um, energy for transformation.
Yes.
And then what naturally happens is that people move towards comfort. Like they are drawn when you are in discomfort, you want to move towards comfort. And so I really think that the design community has been flushed with this idea of working towards creating frictionless experiences and identifying pain points and systematically working to eliminate them. And what we see is that there's just this incredible skyrocketing mental health crisis at the same time as, it's like the poly crisis at the same time as environmental degradation. And so we are missing something. I don't think that a good life is a life without struggle, without challenge, right? I think that, you have to climb the mountain to get the view from the top of the mountain, right? Or like that there's a value in that. As a former mountain climber, I think there's a yeah, a beauty in
Yeah,
that.
there's a sense of achievement for sure. I mean, I think that as a learning designer, you experience this every day. I don't think anyone learns from vanilla, right? So if it's all meh, then they just go home and they don't remember anything because what did you experience? Well, practically nothing.
Yeah.
And especially because the context is of choppy waters and there's so much going on, our nervous systems as humans are sort of tuned to a different, well, going back to the resonance thing, so to a different vibrational level. So unless we are able to do something about that and calibrating that vibrational level to something more congruent, more attuned, more, aligned with our individuality, then it's very difficult to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say that like to that question of is it like work, is it like avoiding suffering or working towards something like a purpose or something that's meaningful you, I wouldn't say that it's ever one or the other. I would say that there's always it has to be a degree of both of those things. Um, and I think especially in terms of the growth of an individual, like human development and human growth, I really do believe in a strength-based approach. I believe in working on where helping people create also especially a culture of looking for how we can grow each other. And I think if there's one thing that the Chaos Pilots does incredibly, and what I really took when I studied for 3 years at the Chaos Pilots many years ago, is that the power of being in a group of people. You're in a team of 30 people for 3 years, going through a variety of experiential learning programs and yeah, exposure, studying project management, business design, and leadership. And really the power of being with peers that are really looking to bring out your strengths is there's nothing like that. I mean, there's just really nothing like that type of culture. And for really supporting someone's expansion or deep development. Um, and so in that sense, that I would say that that's more of like the positive side of change happens from bringing out people's strengths, looking for where they are strong and helping them, navigate towards that. At the same time, I think it's almost a more, that's like on the sort of social side. I think it's more of on a personal level that we need to be aware of where, um, yeah, where there is friction in our lives and having that sort of metacognition, that self-awareness to be able to take action on that before it turns into a black hole that sucks us in.
Okay, so as designers, we most of us like to use something which we call the crit in designer slang, which is the design critique. And what's important about design critiques is that they focus on what is happening, not the person. And I think that what you're showing us is that we need each other as peers to hold mirrors up for those things that are uncomfortable for us to see. Like, if you don't like something about yourself, the likelihood that you will confront yourself with that is quite low. It would be kind of masochistic to keep looking at yourself and at your flaws the whole time. So we try to empower ourselves by, positivity and perhaps a bit of discipline for sure. But, it's much more difficult if you are alone or if you're in your echo chamber to see the things that are missing, that could be the potential that you're not tapping into, the things that could be better. And this idea of working together is so important because you don't just need an observer, you need someone that feels trustworthy, that has your best interests in mind, someone potentially like you. Not you yourself, but like us, having someone like oneself looking back in and saying, hey, have you wondered about this with curiosity? How might we do more of that? Like what are ideas and things that you do within your programs for people to unleash this kind of peer power of helping one another grow?
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'm on a lifelong journey to learn more about that. But some of the things that we found successful is a mindset of connection before content. We all have there's a scientific psychological measurement of openness to experience, and it's debatable if we're able to change that. Actually, we're kind of like psychologists who see different interventions, and people kind of go back to their baseline of openness to experience. But we do know that we can temporarily hack openness to experience. And we do that through positive emotions and positive relationships. So we always try to start our learning programs by building positive emotions and positive relationships. And what that does is it literally opens the doors of the mind. It allows people to be receptive, to be curious, to be open literally to the experience that you've designed. And so I think that's an incredibly important way to start. I think the Chaos Pilot culture is incredibly devoted. And if there's, you know, there may be chaos in many sides of the Chaos Pilot culture, but we as a staff are very committed to connecting with each other and genuinely starting every meeting with check-ins, devoting a lot of resources to having shared experiences of taking a shared trip to Berlin for inspiration or taking offsites together. And I think that commitment to building meaningful relationships is at the core of allowing that culture to unfold also to the people that we train. And so yes, so take your own medicine before you
Give us
give it
some
to other people.
examples. Give us some examples of how you do that.
Well, yes. I think the other like specific technique that I find useful as a learning designer is to think of different relational levels. So one of the things that the military does when they build teams, the military is like one of the most effective organization, or they have some of the most effective techniques to build teams in the world. And there's a lot we can learn from them. And one of the things that they do is they start by building a really strong team, really building a strong relationship between a small group of people. We normally put people in groups of 4 to 6, and we run intense exercises where they really deeply see each other. And then you take them out of that team. And then you expose them to a lot of other different stimulus, put them in other groups, and then you bring them back into that team. So it's actually kind of again this like working with comfort or discomfort when they by the time they come back like, oh yes,
Mm.
finally these people again. And through that sort of taking them out of the team, and then you actually really build a relationship by giving them shared experiences that they can then discuss together with that group that they like. So basically, the technique is that you build a strong team, and then you take them out of that team and intentionally expose them to a challenge, a lot of different challenges, and then you bring them back into that team. Um, and then the other thing is, yeah, that you design for multiple levels. There's studies of what makes music festivals so meaningful. And one of the things that they've found there is that music festivals very successfully are designed for different levels of relationality. So you have the individual experience, which is there's a certain relation in that. Then you have, for example, the group of friends that you go with.
Mhm.
So designing specific experiences that's for friends to share, or in the case of professional trainings that I deliver a lot, that's like small peer groups. And then you think about what is shared with the whole group. That's like everyone at the concert or the whole group that's in the training. And really looking at as you're designing that learning journey, what specific moment, making sure that you're allowing for some small group, some whole group, some individual, and really sort of like building that rhythm between those different moments.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And it's so important because in design, perhaps one of the least valued things is silence, is not doing, is allowing. And those are the moments where people can catch up to the power of the intention of design, which is not always explicit because it has to be felt, right? If we bring people through experiences which we design for them, we have an intent in terms of how it might transform them, how it might change them, what it might make them think about. But we forget, oftentimes, as designers out in the jungle that is this world, to leave space for that moment of realization. And I think that that's something that designers can't do for people, that it's something that people need others for, to compare, to contrast, to share, to discuss. And it's so, so important that we start bringing that back into our design endeavors. Where do you look for inspiration? So you've mentioned the military, which is, it's true. They're amazing at, creating this sense of connection and strengthening people through their team. But there are surely more sources of inspiration. What are those?
Oh, there's so many sources of inspiration. I think I'm deeply inspired by nature, and think, having rituals that bring me out into nature and have that connection. I do a lot of trail running, and I also have been exploring combining my running practice with my meditation practice as well.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I think that that kind of like deep grounding or for myself enables me to approach my work with another level of getting inspiration from all the client work that I do, designing learning experiences. I read a lot. I love reading, you know. Yeah, and I think that's really important that for me to be exposed to sort of like the idea verse that other people are creating, and it's always shifting and it's always developing. And I think I'm inspired by both the design community, UX design, service design. It's super interesting with what's happening in the world of technology. I get like different, I love to read about technology because I think there's a lot we can learn from how the sort of the fast pace that technology moves at. And I'm also deeply inspired by philosophy. I think that there's so much we can learn from, especially the philosophers that have been around for a long time. I think there's something to be said to sort of like for like the classics, so to speak. So rather than always pursuing like what is the newest trend or, but really looking at what books have made an impact on people in the past and how can there's oftentimes something deeply relevant about something, even if it's sort of historical or aged. And oftentimes, like the new trends, the things that people jump on, they end up fading away in a couple years. So rather than going to those things, really looking at like what are like the classic, what are the theories built on, and going back to those actual sources. I think that's something that I've really been trying to practice and inspired by the last years. Yeah.
I'm triggered by what you said about the combinations. I think that's pretty amazing. So you talked about combining meditation and running, and I'm like, okay, how does that even look and feel like? Because I'd be sort of, trying to run, gasping for air, forget all thoughts, all possibility of sort of tuning into, the strength of what meditation does for you. How do you do that?
There's a fantastic book. I can't remember the author's name. He's a Tibetan Lama, really,
Hmm.
and it's called Running with the Mind of Meditation.
Okay.
And so he talks about it's not the same as sitting meditation. It's different.
No, clearly.
obviously. But one of these things that has just blown my mind is this statement of your mind is the rider and your breath is the horse. So if you think about that as you run and you really deeply come into that mindset of like, yes, whatever that means to you, however that has been really powerful for me. Really, really powerful. And it's not, I think there's also something that, with running specifically, it's something that you need to be in good shape to be able
Yeah.
to approach it with a mindful state. So I don't think that, that's something that takes time
Yes.
to build up that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that in general, there is so much potential for a what did you say? Like a layer of mindfulness around the way that we interact in the world and specifically as designers. I think that can add a deep level of continued inspiration because through that sort of a focus of attention, we open up for so much possibility, for curiosity, for learning in every moment. Whereas when we sort of turn off that sharpness, that freshness of experience, that freshness of attention, we shut off our ability to learn, to really be surprised in these moment to moment interactions. And I think specifically and so powerfully as a facilitator, because as a facilitator, you have to be meeting a group where they are, not where you think they will be. And I think that's something that is really an art to be able to be in front of a group and have that level of fresh mindfulness or presence that allows you to yeah, I mean, in that sense, I honestly believe that like your attention as a facilitator is your most powerful thing that you can bring to a group.
Yeah, I've seen you do it. So I know that's exactly as you describe it. It's also quite powerful that you can be so eloquent in describing what's happening because there's a lot of things moving in that process. And I think that that captures the essence of transformation. Do you have a
Mm.
go-to definition for transformation?
You're pressing me because I have to look
Well,
at it.
maybe you do, maybe you don't.
I think that the, you know what? I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure I do.
I'm gonna guess that your if you would have a definition for transformation, it would be linked to learning and kind of the pedagogy, like almost sort of speaking about the old thinkers, like the original founding fathers and mothers of the more progressive pedagogy movements like Maria Montessori, like Piaget, really looking at what is this canvas that can be filled and populated through curiosity, through mixing and matching, these combinations that you talked about. And it's very similar to my definition of transformation, which is simply etymological and saying it's across form, across structures, across into the unknown, across form, shapes, structures, ideas. Can you go beyond what you know in order to become a new version of yourself that is then morphing, transforming, And this is so human, to learn as we go, to have this curiosity awakened, sometimes from a positive place, sometimes from a place of discomfort, but in all cases towards something new and different. It's very scary because we don't know it yet. So that requires this space holding and this guidance that you talk about. And these are skills that, especially at this sort of very turbulent time, we need to develop more and more. How do you deal with that? Because there is all of this duality, there are all of these sort of cultural narratives and set ways and structures and ways of doing that need to be broken through in order to, show up on the other side transformed. How do you deal with that, especially because you work with so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds, that you may have people that relate to you as a facilitator hierarchically when that's not what you're aiming for. So how do you break those patterns?
Well, first of all, you again have to just meet people where they are. I think the most powerful thing you can do to help people and you know operate across different contexts is to learn the language of the context you're speaking in. I've just been doing for the last over a year and a half now, working with Lego, and you would not believe the level of jargon, the level of that they actually have kind of their own internal language, their way, like, definitely such a strong internal culture. And it took me a long time. It took me around 6 months to really get comfortable with that. And until you learn that internal language, internal culture, it's really hard for you to come in and make a change that will stick. I think I think that that's incredibly important is meeting people where they are, speaking their language. If they want to talk business, talk business. If they want to talk spirituality. There's a way that you can adapt your message to the people that you're speaking to. Um, and I think the other thing is just starting with curiosity and being open to the fact that you don't know all the answers, and being open to the fact, like open to when you come up to a challenge or you don't know the answer, rather than you're sort of like um there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of expectations that people
Right.
sort of like get, like, how many notes did I take? How much, and so constantly pushing back on that expectation, and to give the people you're working with more autonomy, more ownership, which oftentimes is met by the people you're working with like a degree of challenge. Like, they want the answers. They want you just to tell them what to do, right? So how do you actually build that relationship in with a strong enough level of trust so that they trust that through you guiding them through a learning process, that you're creating enough value for them, rather than through you just giving them the answer. Yeah, and
We
I'm
are in
sure.
a time of transition from one model to the next. So it must go, it must fail, to use a word. It must go wrong often. How do you reconcile? How do you repair that?
One of the techniques that I've found effective is that we always create a sort of core team from the client side, and really work with that small group of people in a more intense way that is over a longer period of time, where the goal is that that group really gets ownership over everything, over the process, over the content. And ultimately, it's those people that are carrying the flag and really implementing the work when you leave. So I think, again, I don't believe that transformation happens without relationships, and I think that's again the strong suit that you have to lean into. So what I found is that when that trust is really built with the organization that you're trying to support, then the seeds for transformation have fertile ground to grow within. But when those relationships are drying up, or there's not enough nutrients there, then the change doesn't stick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're full circle back to no connection without, there's no content without connection, right? Connection first, then
Yes.
content, and that's so important. But it is something that is in transition, and also within the learning programs at Chaos Pilots, because in client teams you have more space for kind of getting to an agreement. How are we going to do this? but there is so much work that goes into the team that is supporting the learning so that there are more perspectives, more angles, and more voices to help mirror back to the people learning what we're going through, and a lot of also self-reflection. So perhaps one of my favorite tools in at the Kaospilots in Aarhus has been using the history map to highlight the moments of maximum learning, because there is this ritual capacity that allows us to integrate. In Dutch, the word for this is verinnerlijken, to bring it inside. Yeah,
That's
so
beautiful.
to make it your own, to give it a place in your heart. And I think that this is the core of how your learning programs, live on with the people, and with the total freedom to kind of continue to transform that as they grow. And I mean it seriously as a compliment, Andy. I mean, I've seen you at work, and I've seen what it does with
Mm,
people now for more than a decade. So I
mm.
think I have a right to say that. What would happen if we were to forward, say, maybe 5, maybe 20 years into the future, and more people would be working in these ways? So putting relationship first, understanding that there are different perspectives and different combinations, that what we learn is there to enrich us, and through us allow us to, bring forth different forms of being in the world. What does that world, according to Andy, look like if we fast forward into the future?
I love the idea or the vision that in some way we're at the beginning of a new enlightenment, and this new enlightenment is based on human development, that humans are relating to each other again, like we say, in a different way, but also relating to our world in a different way, in a way that is much more in line with actually how nature works and how relationships work, the like in ecosystem, the flows of nutrients, and how different actors in that ecosystem have different things that they need and that they give. And I think we can yeah, and we have all the knowledge now, and it's just a matter of actually getting the new ways of learning and training out into the world. And I think that if that happens, it will really, really positively benefit all of humanity and also all of life on the earth, because we will embrace a more systemic, a more empathetic worldview.
In that context, artificial intelligence is a roadblock or an accelerator, a catalyst.
I don't think that it's either. I think that it's a tool like any other. Of course, it's far more powerful. I think what is concerning to me is the idea of building it without ethics built into it. You wouldn't raise a child without ethics built into it, especially a child with incredible, incredible power, right? It would almost be like the metaphor of if you had like Godzilla or like a giant that was incredibly powerful, like that powerful being could, shape it will shape the and of course we would want a giant to be to have ethics. If it didn't have ethics, it would squash people. Of course. So the idea that we can build AI without a sort of ethical backbone to me is totally, absolutely irresponsible. And yet I really don't want to be someone that fears technology. I really believe in it. I think that there's so much potential for it to dramatically increase the speed with which we can make the world a better place for everyone and all beings if we approach it with the right mindset.
And might you say then, in terms of this beautiful future scenario that you painted for us, that we become much more attuned to the systemic nature of the world we live in, and we understand ourselves as interwoven and interconnected with it, then we will interweave AI. It cannot be
Absolutely.
outside of that system, in so long as we're all sort of, I'm thinking in a sort of Kaospilot's imagery here, all of us standing in a circle and embracing what is, to give form to what could be, through us, through this power of the collective, to be the guardrail for this ethical quality. Because I, like you, I read a lot, and I read a lot of Indian spiritual Hindu spiritual literature. And I was reading this book, and there was this sentence that had me thinking about it for days, that said, why are we having all these discussions about ethics and moralities? There is only one rule: respect life. And
Hmm.
it's like, boom,
Beautiful.
silence,
Yeah.
That is so powerful. If we are all embracing this livelihood, this vitality, then surely this Godzilla giant, as you've sort of depicted the AI, will become a gentle giant, will become a serving giant to this endeavor that we all become a part of.
Yes.
But Chaos
But
Pilots is called Chaos Pilots because of navigating chaos. So that is also something we have to bear in mind, that this is not something anyone, AI or people, can do alone. I think that although Chaos Pilot is written without the S, it is plural. It's always been, right?
yeah.
Okay, how does community play a role for you in bringing this vision forward, Andy?
Hmm. I love this idea that the next Messiah is not an individual, the next Messiah is a collective.
Mm,
And I think that, you know, what will what will really move humanity forward is if we are able to work more effectively together across difference. And I think one of, yeah, I think it is incredibly concerning to me the pushing back on and pulling away from global cooperation.
mm,
And I think that's at the core of what is needed to move us forward. I think it's a very interesting time for Europe and for the rest of the world, where you simultaneously see this push towards sort of nationalism. And at the same time, I think it's so important that we, especially as designers, are having a global perspective, that we're really looking for what is it that is respecting life, building relationships and respect and care for humanity as a whole rather than just for, my country. So I don't think we're going to go back from this nationalist direction. I think it's going to continue for many, many years to come, unfortunately. And I think that we need to really then extra like turn up the volume for how can we um, really build the dignity and respect for all people.
yeah, yeah, I'm totally with you on that. So, our last question of the podcast is referring to the quest for questions, which you may remember from Change Ahead. And it comes from the idea that when we're facing the unknown, we don't have answers, we only have questions. So, what do you think will be our next question?
How can we scale meaningful human development?
Wow, I'm so happy to be collaborating with you on that endeavor, man. I mean, really, yeah, totally count me in to help find ways to, if not answer that question, come up with the next and the next and the next one as we co-evolve. So
Yeah.
tell me, where can people find your work, Andy?
Yes, yeah, you can find the work of KS Pilots on KS Pilot, the KS Pilot website. We have a variety of different programs. And yeah, we love collaborating with like-minded organizations and with like-minded people that are also asking these types of questions. And yeah, you can also, I have written some articles on Medium or on LinkedIn as well. So yeah,
Yeah, we'll add
thank you
all
so
of that
much.
to the show notes, as also some of the references that you mentioned and I've been taking note of. Um, Anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, thank you so much, Corolla. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really, really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Andy. It's amazing to be able to sit on this side and share people, all of the pioneers that are making transformation happen, and you're certainly one of them. So thank you so much for being here today and for your wonderful work.
Thank you.
Bye bye.